So let's take a look at what else we can do with the inspector inside our DevTools. It's the day after yesterday. The news has all changed, but here we are on BBC News website again. And just as a quick recap of how to open up DevTools, we can right click and we can inspect an element on the page. We can go to View and Developer, and we can open the source or developer tools or the console. The source won't actually open up the DevTools, but developer tools and JavaScript console will. So you can do that, or you can press this shortcut, which on my Mac is Command Alt or Command Option and I. So I'm just going to click this menu here, and that opens up my DevTools. Let's make it a bit bigger. Sorry for the small text. There's probably a way to change that, but I don't know how to do that and have never done it. So here we are inspecting the stuff. We've got the Elements tab, and we're inspecting what's on the BBC News website. And what I can see here is most things are collapsed right now. So I can choose to navigate using these little arrows. If I can find something that looks of interest. Where's all the content? Crikey, it's all... There we go, it's all inside here. So as I move over these things on the right hand side, they'll highlight on the left. So my header is now highlighted on the left hand side, and I can expand that if I want to inspect the header. And if I hover over this orb modules div, then I can expand that, because you'll see that contains all of the main content and so on and so forth. I happen to have chosen a really complicated website to do this with, which might pose some challenges, but it'll be interesting to see how we can use the inspector to have a look through. So let's say I want to inspect this picture of Amber Rudd here. I can right click on that and I can go inspect, and that will actually open up the tree of elements, and it will highlight the element that I chose to inspect, which is kind of interesting because I right clicked on this image. So let's do that again. This is what you get for choosing a complicated website. So it's actually highlighted this A tag here, which might be, BBC might be doing something clever here. Let's just scroll and see if we can find where that image is. There we go. So that image is actually inside this div here. So you can already see how I can, by just moving around the tree on the right hand side, I can see the elements linking up to the actual components of the page. I don't know, they must be doing something funny with their element positioning or something for me not to get where I want to using the inspect here. So yeah, that's kind of clever what they've done there. So anyway, there's our image, and if we open this up a little bit further, we'll eventually hit this image tag, which is our photo of Amber Rudd. Now we can do a few things here, and we can just delete this if we want to. So if I press, can I do it with a right click? Yeah, so I can delete the element, or I can hide the element, so I can actually get rid of it, and it now shows whatever was behind it before. I can choose to unhide it. I can delete it from the flow entirely. So that's now gone. You can undo, I don't know if you can do that from here. No, but if you do it your usual Command or Control Z, I can undo things and bring it back, so it keeps an undo history. And I can also, by double clicking in here, I can edit things. So I can double click on the class, and this lets me edit the class name if I want to, though there are better ways of editing the classes assigned to elements. I can even edit content. So if I go over here and right click and inspect this title, let's open up that A. So you'll see I've got an H3 inside an A tag here, and if I double click on here, I can actually change the headline here. So it's now perfectly thinkable to have a no Brexit deal according to Amber Rudd. This is really interesting because this is why you shouldn't really believe any screen grabs of anything that you see on Twitter. So if I go to twitter.com, and let's just go to our beloved US president's profile and just find something that he said, and then I can right click this and I can inspect on this. And I can go and edit this tweet. So I can just put a not in here, and that updates on the left hand side, and now I have a tweet with completely different text that I can screen grab and send to people, or I can inspect this and it will find it for me again, and I can completely change this. I can make him say whatever I want to and screen grab it and send it off to people. So this is why you should never trust screen grabs of things in Twitter, because it's actually trivial to be able to change what someone has said. Let's have a look at how we can modify classes of things. Again, this is probably a bad example, but because the BBC website is so complicated. But if I click on this div, and if I click on this CLS here, these are the classes that are applied to this element. I can turn classes on and off to see what they do. And you'll see some changes. So there we go, this is a 2/3 width image, and I can turn off the 2/3 width image and it makes it a full width image. You can switch all these on and off at will. You can add new classes if you want to, so I quite often build things that have toggled states, so I can just add toggle in here and then I can turn that on and off. So you can fiddle around with the classes, and also you can fiddle around with the hover states as well. So this has got a hover state over here, but when I move my mouse away, the hover state disappears. So if I right click and inspect that, then I can click on hover here and I can select the hover state, and that hover state is now applied to this element, and that's what the little orange thing here is telling me. So the inspector here is a great way of debugging your code and your CSS. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can add new content. You can actually completely edit blocks of HTML in here by doing this. Again, this is quite a big block of HTML, but with something simpler, you can just go in and edit and completely change things. What the changes that you make in here don't get saved back to your source code. It's just a temporary change inside the browser. But you can use this to try out new layouts and try out new styles. And I will talk about changing and analyzing styles in a future video. This box down here and this properties box over here is really helpful for debugging, diagnosing and tweaking your CSS. So yes, we'll talk about that in a future video, but hopefully you've seen how this inspector can be really useful at diving into your HTML and your CSS, trying out some of the things like modifying classes and modifying hover and focus and active states, and just generally playing around with and inspecting the code. One thing that is just worth noting before we go, which is that there's this other option on most websites. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, depending on where you're clicking, but you can view page source, and you can also do that, remember, from this view menu under developer. I can view source, and that actually shows you the HTML that comes straight back from the server. So this is the actual page that you got sent. There's quite a lot of garbage there because it's a big complicated BBC page. This source code that comes back from the server is different, or can be different, to the tree of elements that you're inspecting here. And the reason is that this tree of elements is alive and can be modified by JavaScript. So if someone's got some script which is modifying classes, or is actually inserting or moving elements around within the page, then this is a live view of that and is actually showing you the current state of the page, rather than this original HTML source, which is showing you what was originally sent back from the server in unmodified state. So this hasn't run any JavaScript, and it won't run any JavaScript to modify any of the content on the page. So these views can be different, but just bear that in mind. This is a live living view of what's currently showing. Yeah, hopefully that's fun. Go and open the inspector on some pages of yours and have a dive around, modify some things. You can drag and drop stuff even if you wanted to. You can just take one of these stories and drag and drop it like this into a different place on the page, and it will actually reorder everything. So there's all sorts of fun stuff you can do messing about with other people's web pages and with Donald Trump's tweets. So go away and have a play and see what you can do.